The Chicago Bears don't get any moral victories for losing to the Miami Dolphins, but watching that game was a ton of fun, and it has to leave you feeling really excited about the future.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lorin Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Bears. You can like Locked On Bears on Facebook. Join the Locked On Bears Facebook group for even more Bears talk. And make sure you hit that subscribe button on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel to keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today, and hopefully every single day. Today's episode is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with our promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. On the show today, we go back through this Bears loss to the Miami Dolphins, including another strong showing from Justin Fields. The Bears offense continuing to look fresh, innovative, dynamic, scoring points at quite a high clip. But the defense still not able to hold up its end of the bargain. And we'll talk about some of the things that went wrong on that side of the ball and the way that the Dolphins were able to score a little bit too easily, at least through the first 2.5 quarters before things really slowed down for them late in the stretch of this game. And we'll wrap up. We have to talk about the first of all, the debut of Chase Claypool, the no-call pass interference that was not towards the end of the game there, and just how the ending as a whole came together for the Chicago Bears. I don't want that to bury the whole story of the game, though, because what another performance from Justin Fields. 178 rushing yards with, of course, the big 61-yard touchdown run. Like, and when you just look at the passing stats, right? 17 to 28 for 123 yards, 3 touchdowns passing certainly stands out. Plus, of course, the 1 rushing touchdown. But, you know, we have to make sure that, I think it's easy for us in Chicago, but outside of, you know, the Bears market, that we need to make sure people don't evaluate Justin Fields by the passing box score. That if you see, 123 passing yards, he must not have done much, or he must not have had a very good game, or he must not have passed well. You know, I mean, whatever narrative you want to try and ascribe to that based on the box score does not in any way reflect what he was able to do with this Bears offense today. I mean, they scored 32 points, and it wasn't like it was trick plays. I mean, there's a lot of quarterback running, but it's not like this. That is the offense. It's designed that way. And there's so much creativity that we're seeing in how they're doing this with Fields and with the weapons that they do have, which isn't a lot. But, you know, they have the sprint outs and the rollouts, and they ran a tight end jet sweep. They put David Montgomery at wide receiver and ran a running back jet sweep. They had a tight end QB sneak, a bunch of different types of RPOs. They ran a speed option pitch play. You know, they had a really strong play action from Justin Fields on the first Cole Kmet touchdown. You know, they ran the end around to Darnell Mooney. There's a lot of different dressing that they put on top of this offense. And it feels like week in and week out, like there's always something fresh and new that's working for this Bears offense. And over the last 3 games in particular, where we're seeing Fields get more into a rhythm passing, right, where the ball is coming out on time. You know, he takes his drop back, a hitch, progression, step, throw on that clock that it's supposed to be with the quarterback. He's not leaving the pocket early like we saw earlier this season and last season as well. He's staying in there, scrambling when he needs to, and absolutely has needed to in some of these moments. But also, I do think the offensive line has been consistent enough, not great, but not a disaster falling apart at every turn, and that he has had some plays with some time to throw, and he has made some really nice throws downfield. I mean, of course, he's going to miss on some throws here and there. Every quarter, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, well, this year's not a good example for those two, but the great quarterbacks miss on some throws sometimes too. So I mean, he's not missing, the super obvious easy one. He's not making terrible decisions with the ball, although the interception that got overturned by the penalties, he let that one float up there a little bit too long and was just not thinking that one all the way through in terms of how he delivered the ball, but not necessarily as much the decision on the ball there. But getting Darnell Mooney involved, getting Cole Kmet quite a bit more involved here, getting Claypool involved, and we'll get into Claypool a little bit more a little bit later on. But it really all comes together as like how good Justin Fields is performing and getting these kind of yards and points without the supporting cast, right? I mean, yes, they had Claypool, but Claypool is not 100%. But like we spent all offseason talking about how they really haven't done much to build around Fields on the offense, and that people are saying they don't trust him because they're not putting the pieces around him and he's not in the position to be successful. And so if he's being successful with this around him, imagine what that could look like with $150 million in cap space spending this offseason, with high draft picks, with a real investment around him, just how much more there can still be. That the games end quite a bit differently, and the things end up going a little bit more the Bears' way when you add some real talent around what's clearly your most talented player at that quarterback position. And it's really, really exciting to see him do it, in back-to-back weeks against playoff caliber opponents in these kind of situations without a playoff caliber team around him. But he clearly looks like the guy, a baller at quarterback, and it's super, super fun to watch, even when it results in a 3-point loss that leaves you frustrated at the end because this team is good enough and has enough to get your hopes up to be able to come back and win a game like this, or try and get something rolling there, and just quite not able to do so. And we'll get into the disappointment at the end a little bit later on, but first we need to turn our attention to the defense and kind of get a better sense of what went wrong and why we knew they would have some trouble here with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but we'll talk about some of the things the Dolphins were doing successfully and how they were doing it next on Locked On Bears. Well, you know it. Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, the better way to do daily fantasy sports, because PrizePicks puts you in control. We love PrizePicks. I'm always betting on PrizePicks every single week. Going over on the Justin Fields rushing yards when those become available. Worked out quite well this weekend. Over on the Darnell Mooney receiving yards as well. I mean, all you have to do is pick 2 to 5 players and whether they'll score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, and you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry, not just for Bears games, but across pretty much every single professional sports anywhere in the world. It seems like they've got everything at PrizePicks. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with our promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. You deposit $50, PrizePicks gives you $50. You understand. Just don't forget to enter that promo code LOCKEDON at sign-up for an instant deposit match up to $100. We talked about it on Friday's Game Plan podcast, that this was probably going to be a shootout, a lot of back and forth scoring there, and that the Dolphins with Hill and Waddle, there's not really a way to stop them. You just hope to slow them down a little bit. And that was, not super well accomplished in the early on, but the last Dolphins touchdown was scored with 6 minutes left in the third quarter, essentially right a little after, 2/3 of the way through the third quarter. So a whole quarter and 6 minutes, the Dolphins did not find the end zone again. So the Bears were able to buck up a little bit there, and I think disrupted Tua a bit more down the stretch that ultimately made some of the difference there, because the Dolphins, we knew going in, they like to attack that intermediate to deep middle of the field area, right? Behind the linebackers, in front of the safeties. And a lot of times they'll do that off of play action. It didn't seem like as much that play action was the thing that was directly killing the Bears. The Dolphins ran play action, and it was effective at times, but it wasn't, like we've seen plays where it's very clearly like play action, linebackers step up, and somebody's like the linebackers are turning and running back, and as the quarterback is throwing it to the receiver. You can see the linebacker or the safety or whoever who is supposed to be there that bit on the play action. You can see him running back into the frame on your screen and say, okay, play action really got them there. There were maybe moments of that, on first watch, but it wasn't as specifically play action based damage that it felt to me as like the egregious thing. Like, they just keep biting on play action, and that's why the Dolphins passing game works so well. No, I don't think that was the case. I mean, we'll look at the all 22 for tomorrow's podcast and really see for sure. But like some of it's just Tyreek Hill's really good and really fast, and Tua did a really good job of what we were talking about with Justin Fields, like in rhythm, on time, perfect timing, accurate type throws over the middle, where it's not like the guy is wide open, but Tua's able to fit it into a window between the underneath coverage and the overtop coverage, where it's just like, it's a great ball in a great spot to a great player who makes some moves after the catch. And Mike McDaniel, the Dolphins coach, does some different things to scheme these guys open. Like there was the wheel route down the right sideline where they had the trips bunch formation on the right side, and Hill starts on the inside and runs a wheel to the flat and then switches up vertical, and he turns, and Jalen Johnson just isn't fast enough. I mean, none of these Bears cornerbacks are as fast as Tyreek Hill, and so there's enough space there for him to make the catch. I did like that when Hill made some of these plays, right? There was never that big time like breakaway, no one can catch him, gone into the end zone type of plays. Like they were always able to usually end up forcing him out of bounds. There wasn't the throw him a wide receiver screen and he breaks 5 tackles and goes 80 yards. Like there wasn't a Justin Fields 61-yard touchdown run play where it's just like, why can't anyone on our defense touch this guy? Like that didn't happen with Tyreek Hill in this game. He made plays after the catch, but they were always able to get him down before like the big time breakaway game breaking play. Now he still averaged 20 yards a catch and 7 for 143. Like he was great. Don't get me wrong, but at least every time it seemed they were able to get him down for the most part. Like I think didn't his touchdown come on just a short one in the red zone? Like he was standing on the goal line. It wasn't a breakaway run after the catch. He had big plays after the catch, but not the type of like soul crushing, defeating like, oh man, we just can't catch this guy. It was like, okay, he catches it and he's gonna get some yards after the catch, but somebody caught up to him every single time and limited the damage from being even worse than it was on some of those plays. And just having watched it, the first time through and not at the all-22 film, I think what was different late in the game, after, like I said, the Dolphins' last touchdown came with about 6 minutes left in the third quarter, didn't score any more points. They only had a couple other drives there. But I think 2 things changed from there. One, the Dolphins' sloppiness started catching up with them a little bit. We talked about that coming into the game, that we heard from Kyle Krabs from Locked On Dolphins on Crossover Thursday last week that the Dolphins have way too many penalties and just like miscommunication things and little mistakes that there's a certain sloppiness to the Dolphins where at times they beat themselves a little bit or make their own lives a little bit more difficult. And there was a play, I think it was in the early fourth quarter or so, when it was like 3rd and 3 in the shotgun. And yeah, I think it would have been late third quarter. Regardless, it's in the shotgun, snap is low and it's at to his knees and he just has to dive on it and fall on it. And that kills a third and short, and they end up going for it on 4th and medium and throws in complete turnover on downs, right? Where it's like the Bears didn't exactly stop them there. They kind of stopped themselves. Or they had a 12 men on the field penalty on one of the third downs that they were converting, or a 4th down or something. And it's just like little things like that they weren't as sloppy yet in the first half that helped the Bears defense in the second half. And the other thing was the Bears pass rush seemed to be a little bit more disruptive in the second half, because I'm really curious to see the PFF pressure numbers in terms of how the quarterbacks performed after this game, because it felt like anecdotally every time the Bears got Tua uncomfortable, pushed him off his spot where like he goes through his drop back and then there's pressure in his face and he has to move and adjust. It felt like there were only 1 or 2 times that when that happened that Tua actually made a good play on that. Like most of the time when they were actually winning their pass rush and moving him off of his spot and disrupting his rhythm, he wasn't able to do a lot with it. They had some rollouts and moved him intentionally out of the pocket, but when the Bears forced him out of the pocket a few times, and unless he was able to reset, which happened once or twice, where there was pressure, he escapes, then he can slow down again, set his feet, and step into the throw. But if he never had on plays where he never had a chance to really set his feet, didn't really do much. And it felt like those were the plays where the Bears made their stops, was when the pass rush was able to disrupt him from that rhythm a little bit more. The problem was there weren't a lot of those plays in total. The pass rush wasn't effective enough. It came in a little more, it felt like, in that fourth quarter and that later of the second half there when the Dolphins offense slowed down a little bit. I think the pass rush was one of the factors in that. Whereas, first half, Tua largely had what he wanted in terms of time in the pocket. He's not a guy that holds on to it super, super long anyway, but it's like in rhythm, drop back, step up, step into throw, good timing and everything. Like, you have to disrupt that timing for Tua, and the Bears weren't really able to do that nearly enough. But when they did, it felt like it was particularly effective, just not enough of it that you needed to see, in this game from them. And then, of course, you lose Kindle Vildor and you have Jalen Jones out there, and the Bears went with a lot of dime package. Instead of having two linebackers in on nickel, it was Nick Morrow and DeAndre Houston Carson as a third safety, playing a sort of a linebacker strong safety role. So they're trying to get used to life without Roquan Smith. Jack Sanborn made some plays in the running game and even tripped up Tyreek Hill after the catch on one play. I didn't think Sanborn had the speed to step up and make a play like that, chasing downhill. So there's some moments to be encouraged with, but the Bears are still working through some very real defensive changes, and no one really has a formula to stop Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle at this stage of where the Dolphins offense is right now. That doesn't excuse the Bears giving up 35 points on it, but that's kind of what we expected, right? It wasn't an unexpected defensive performance, even though it's still disappointing, right? I guess we were expecting to be disappointed by this Bears defense, and that's about what we saw. And yet the Bears offense still had the ball late in the game, under 2 minutes left, with the opportunity to drive down and take the lead. And they were unable to do so. And some of that was influenced by the referees, and some of that was in their own doing as well. We'll kind of look at the dynamics around what happened at the end, the no call and the pass interference, and just Chase Claypool's debut in general next on Locked On Bears. If you want to get into sports betting, our friends at BetOnline are going to be the number one place we recommend for all of your sports betting needs. Not only this NFL season, but the start of the basketball season as well. It can get you all the different latest player developments, team matchups, news, and in-depth analysis of every single game. The Bears were able to cover the spread in this game if you wanted to bet on that. And they definitely hit the over, which I had talked about on Friday's podcast. So I hope you were able to take advantage and put a little money down on the over for this game in particular, but so much beyond even just Bears games with our friends at BetOnline. It's your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, live betting, and up-to-the-minute updates for every sport out there. So head on over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about all the different trends and action happening each and every day, because BetOnline is where the game starts. I was surprised to see as much Chase Claypool as we did in this game. I haven't seen a final snap count exactly just yet, but they especially early on, it felt like there was a clear effort for the Bears to get him involved. They threw a couple of screen passes to him. They ran the jet sweep to him. Justin Fields took a shot early on downfield that drew a pass interference penalty, and then took a shot downfield later in the game that was also interfered with and did not draw the penalty. And if you've been listening to Locked On Bears podcast for some time now, I'm never a person who blames the referees. I always feel like, yes, it's one play and it was a bad call, it was a bad non-call, but you had 4, 5, 6 other opportunities to where you could have still won the game X, Y, or Z. And I think these things can be simultaneously true. That was, I think, the worst non-call in a Bears game that I think I've ever seen in my time covering the Chicago Bears. I can't think of a Bears moment specifically that egregiously non-called. I mean, that's horrible refereeing in every way, shape, and form. Unacceptable. To me, that was up near the level of the Saints one where they changed the rules in the playoffs a couple years ago when the player clearly intentionally interfered and they didn't call it, where they remember for a couple seasons you could review pass interference, and then it was slowing down the game too much, and they changed that rule back and said, screw it, we're not going to do that anymore. This felt that egregious, but just the game didn't matter as much. If this had happened in a playoff game that decided a playoff game, like the Saints one, that might be a different, or was it the Vikings? Regardless, that would be a different story, and there would be a lot more hype and discussion about it. But in a regular season game for a Bears team that's not going to make the playoffs, it doesn't carry the same weight as it did in the playoffs. But I think it's a similar level of terrible missed call. I think that is true, and it can also be true that the Bears still had a chance to win the game after that play, and that play, that non-call by the referee, was not the only reason the Bears lost. Of course, you throw that pass interference flag, the Bears have the ball in field goal range and at least likely tie the game and send it to overtime. But even though that call was not made, Equanimeous St. Brown drops the pass on 4th and 10, and that's when the Bears lost the game. You know what I mean? He catches that ball on 4th and 10, drive continues, maybe the Bears score and win, and all of a sudden the pass interference penalty is no longer the reason they lost. You know what I mean? So it can be both a terrible, terrible call, or I guess a terrible no call, but a terrible decision, and also more to it than that in terms of answering the Bears' question. Like I can never walk away from the game saying, "Oh, the referees cost the Bears that one," because, like, yes, had the referees not done that, had the referee thrown the flag there, the Bears could have at least tied it. But who knows? Maybe they lose at that point. I mean, it's not a guarantee that they actually win after that call is made either. And again, I come back to, like, Equanimeous St. Brown has to catch that ball. How many games are we going to have this season where a player's inability to hold on to the football literally costs them a win late in the game? You've had 2 Velus Jones muffed punts that screwed the Bears out of not necessarily guaranteed wins otherwise, but took away their opportunity to win those games. And then you had Emir Smith-Marset in the Vikings game. Again, driving 2 minutes left, player gives up the ball to the other team or unable to hold on to the ball, and they lose. And now Equanimeous St. Brown, unable to hold on to the ball, and the Bears lose. Like, Bears wide receivers, not named Mooney, Claypool, and I guess N'Keal Harry, have done a really good job of losing them games late in games. And that's where the whole build around Justin Fields, give him better weapons discussion really starts to come into the mix here, because I mean that's where you really see the big difference. When Fields does everything in his power, he threw an accurate catchable pass beyond the first down marker, or right at the first down marker, on 4th and 10 with under 2 minutes to go in the game. That's all he can do there, right? All you ask of your quarterback is to put a catchable ball up there for a receiver to catch and keep the drive alive. And the receiver couldn't even do that. Velus Jones couldn't even get on the field as a healthy scratch in this game. So I mean, it really is I think a good encapsulation of where the Chicago Bears are in terms of having all this excitement about Fields and making really good progress offensively, and then these key reminders late in games that, like, yeah, your team still isn't all that good. You still have a real talent deficiency around Justin Fields, but that's what the offseason is all about, continuing to kind of build around there. And now you already got Claypool getting more and more up to speed. Like, you could tell he's not, I mean, it wouldn't be realistic to expect that he could run the whole playbook 5 days after being traded here. They had, I think, specific plays, specific routes, specific packages, specific ideas for what his role was going to look like in this game. And in theory, over time, you expand more and more of that, and then you play less and less Equanimeous St. Brown, less and less Velus Jones, although I guess you can't get less than what it is right now. And of course, Emir Smith-Marset is on the Chiefs practice squad. I think he's long gone out of Chicago. So, you know, it's progress, right? It's moving in that right direction, and we can be mad about the referees at the end of that game, but I think we should also be mad at Equanimeous St. Brown for dropping that ball, and be happy that Justin Fields put the Bears in multiple opportunities there for the team to be able to tie it. And whether it's the referees dropping the ball metaphorically or Equanimeous St. Brown dropping the ball literally, it was not Fields who dropped the ball. And that's what's most important for this Chicago Bears season. I'm really excited to go through the All-22 film tomorrow and see what else we can dig out about what was going wrong defensively and why things were flowing so well on the Bears offense. Make sure you come on back for that podcast tomorrow. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening, or if you're watching on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. That's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making the Locked On Bears podcast your first listen today. We here on the Locked On Podcast Network are your team every day. If you're looking for your second listen now, check out Locked On NFL. Kevin Ostreicher is the host for the Monday edition. He had me on Locked On NFL for today's podcast, talking about the Bears, Justin Fields, where the offense is now and where it could go from here. A little more bigger picture on just optimism and excitement for Fields and Claypool and where things could go from here. So check out Locked On NFL now that we're wrapping up Locked On Bears. Then come on back tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Bears and another opportunity for you to bear down.